As I get older, I catch myself remembering that the past can seem like it's uniformly one thing or another. It's uniformly bad or it's uniformly good. And it was never either one of those things. It was always a mix of the two. I have kids. I know many of you have kids, grandkids, nieces, nephews. And especially in the Victorian era, kids were almost depicted like cherubs, like little angels. Kids are animals. If you were a Russian serf in the middle of, the plain in deep snow running from a pack of timber wolves, you have to realize the timber wolves are innocent too. Why am I saying this? Like I said, we look back on the past and we have this tendency to think that real people didn't live there. And the importance about Scripture is that this is about real people. That's why I love the apostles so much. They reflect us. Because you may ask, well, how would I react if I was back then? And I love how heroic we all are in the past, right? You think back, I would have opposed the Nazis in Germany and kept all the Jews off the cattle cars. Would you? I like to think I would. But I know myself, and that was a real-world terrible situation. Was it Thomas Hobbes in Leviathan? He said, I think the complete quote was, when he's talking about human life, he said, our lives are solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Thomas Hobbes must have been fun at a dinner party, huh? Imagine him with his kids, Daddy, I got an egg. Oh, you'll be dead soon enough. Go to bed. Why am I telling you this? We have this tendency. We look back and we think real people didn't live there. But I have to tell you, the world in the past, when we look back on it, we tend to romanticize it. When we picture the past and I'd love to time travel, go back then. We always picture ourselves as the upper crust of people. No one ever says, I'd love to go back to the 1600s and be a serf in Russia. Oh, wouldn't that be awesome? Or a coal miner in Wales. You get up in the dark, you go underground for the entire day, you come back up, it's dark still. Oh, awesome. We never picture that. We picture ourselves as the gentry or a king or queen. We live that way. And when you look back, way back into the past, I want you to remember that the world that Jesus Christ came into was largely solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. I love neo-pagans now. There's a neo-paganism sort of revival, which means basically what? You got a Ouija board in the basement and you like to dance nude in the forest. Let me tell you about paganism and the pantheon of gods that people worship. They were pernicious. They were vengeful. They couldn't be reasoned with. And it was a fatalistic society, which meant the second that you were born, your fate was decided. And if it was a bad fate, there was nothing you could ever do about it. Nothing. No amount of effort. I'll give you one example of this. In Irish mythology, there was the Banshee. And the Banshee, if you heard the Banshee before a battle, not everybody heard the Banshee. It was basically a woman shrieking out in the darkness. If you heard that before a battle, it meant 100% you were going to die the next day. And there was absolutely nothing you could do about it. Now we say today, well, there's no such thing as a banshee, and people probably just heard some random woman screaming. Didn't matter. Did you know, in reality, people died of fright? Strong men died of heart attacks out of fear hearing that. Not all of them, but some of them did. There's your old world. That's the world Jesus came into. Those were the gods. All this myth. I love Greek and Roman mythology. I love reading the stories. But the underlying part of that is that if you got on the wrong side of the gods, you were done, and done forever. And there was nothing you could do about it. And instead, we have this Judeo and then Christian breakthrough of God the one true God, coming to save the world. When we look at Genesis and the story of Joseph, Joseph's brothers were jealous of him and sold him into slavery. He almost died. They almost executed him. But they finally, decided to do the nice thing and to sell him into perpetual slavery. And then when Joseph, of course, as we know, won the favor of the Pharaoh, became a very powerful person in Egypt, his brothers come along during this famine. They need help, and instead of taking vengeance upon, which is what everybody expected, the Vikings loved, just to give you another example, the Vikings loved vengeance, and in fact, they made something of a wonderful thing of it. And the way you would take vengeance is you would pretend to reconcile with the person, and then you would wait, sometimes decades, for a perfect moment to take vengeance upon that person. And that was actually seen as a good thing. That was the expected thing. Instead, here, Joseph sees his brothers, pulls them in, says, I'm glad I ran into you again. I can save you because our father's still alive. It's just this outpouring of love and forgiveness so that we do likewise. When we look at Paul's letter here, we have this concept of the original and then the second Adam. The first Adam, fully human, could not save himself. And once again, if we look back, what if I was Adam? You couldn't save yourself. We can't, as sinful beings, stay in a state of grace, that innocence of childhood, not being self-aware. We become self-aware in our own lives. You see it with your kids. I've mentioned it before. They'll happily run around after a bath, naked around the house, giggling while you're trying to gather them up in a towel to dry them off. They just don't have a sense of shame or self. That comes to them no matter what you do. No matter what you do. And we try to protect our kids as long as possible. They become self-aware. They understand they're not the center of the universe anymore. Well, most of them understand they're not the center of the universe. And then the weight of the responsibility of that comes down upon them. As long as you can avoid it, but it still comes down upon them. That cycle of sinfulness and falling away from God and being unable to reconcile ourselves to God goes on for millennia until eventually God says, I will pay the debt for you that you can't pay for yourselves. I will send the second Adam, who is also fully human, but fully divine. I will send myself down there, and I will reconcile myself to you in this second Adam. This, I can't overstate how much of a radical concept this is. There is no other belief in the universe, in all of human history, that's this. That God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. And so the first Adam was a living being. The last Adam, Christ, was a life-giving spirit. Flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, nor does the perishable inherit the imperishable, writes Paul. And what he means by that is we need to be reconciled through Christ to God. Now, what's the call upon us for the salvation? Radical spirituality. I don't know about you, when I read this list from Luke, you know what I think of all the time, and I have to push this to the back because this is my fault? I go, I can't do this. As soon as I read it, I go, I can't. And you know what? I'm right in a way, and I'm wrong in a way. I'm right in the way of, by myself, I could never do this. Do to others as you would have them do to you. That's the easy one, right? Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who abuse you. If anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. Anyone who takes away a coat, do not withhold your shirt. Give to everyone who begs from you. If anyone takes away your goods, do not ask for them again. Hands up, all of you who can do that every day, day in, day out, 24 hours a day. It just sounds like ridiculous nonsense. And I get after my more, how do I put this? Ryan and I, God bless him, we argue about the word progressive, right? But I love I'm filtering. All my filters are going down. I can't say that. I can't say this. I love when people spend other people's money. I love when people try to put rules on other people that they themselves will not follow. I love when people come to a meeting to talk about big oil and they wheel up in an Escalade. I love it. Oh, I love that. Big Pharma, awful. Didn't you have cancer like 2 years ago? Yeah, but that's besides the point. Really? Did you just tough it out? Or did you go and thankfully take all of the drugs that Big Pharma gives you? Now, I'm not a big proponent of Big Pharma. Don't take away the priest give me a speech. The Big Pharma is awesome. I'm simply saying we are a hypocritical generation. Hypocritical. I'll give you an example from the last church I was at. It's always good to go with the last church you're at. The church I was at, there was a family that every week was talking about how much more other people in the church needed to give. Now, to be fair, they gave a lot of money. To be fair, they also took 4 cruises a year. Couldn't take 3, couldn't take 2, couldn't take 1 and give all the rest of the money. We had people who could honestly barely afford their rent. But they should give $5 more. Why don't you not take one of those trips to the Rhine? You hear where I'm going with that, right? These are radical ways of living, and God calls us to them. Anybody here play darts? Anybody here play pool? Anybody here bowl? Anybody play golf? Like I've said before, what's a perfect round in golf? 18. Does anybody get anywhere near 18? Never. But you'll go out week in, week out, day in, day out, looking at the calendar. When's the snow going to be off? It's April. Honey, why are you going out there? That's crazy. I want to get on the course so I can fail at shooting an 18. I want to go to the bowling alley so I can fail at having a perfect game. Ditto darts. Ditto anything where there's a perfect game and then we fall short, but we do it anyway. This is exactly what we're being called to. Every single day, it is not, this is where this is so important. This is not to beat yourself up for your failures, but to always encourage you that there's more that you can become. And the reward for that is built in. Those who do will be given more to do. And those who don't do at all, those opportunities will dry up. But if we step out in faith to approach this and to make this our goal of a radically spiritual Christian life, we will gain. You're never going to get here. Only Christ could be here. But we're called to strive to be as close to this as we possibly can and not to beat ourselves up. That second part is so important because I do this. Go home at the end of the day and I'll tell you exactly what I think. You can ask my wife, you can ask my mom. I go home and I'll shake my head and think, I didn't do anything today. I know 2 or 3 of you are going, that's right, you didn't. I could have a busy day. And it never ever feels like enough. That's a fault of mine. Because we're not supposed to count it's not a French composition. Remember those? You'd start with 100 and then you just subtract off every mistake you made. That's not our lives. We're supposed to look at what we've done and then pray for the strength to do more and more gradually, little by little, and take on more because the joy comes along with it. So when we look at this, please try to always have fresh in your mind how radical of a departure this was in human history. And it's still radical because we can't achieve it. But not achieving it is not the goal. The goal is to always strive for the next great thing.